Yes, sir, it does.
Okay. And just generally speaking, how often is that type of database stored on a phone? How long is it stored, I should say?
It depends. Depends on how much you're using that database. Some databases will do, it may overwrite information if you're using a lot within 2 days. If it's a location, like an encrypted cache database, it may hold it for 45 days. It's just going to depend how much, because it's self-contained, it needs that room. So it's always the newest in, the oldest out on that database, and it goes through constantly doing that. So it depends. It really depends on how much you're using that database. Whether you may see something that's 45 days old in there, or you may see something that's 2 days old or 2 weeks old.
All right. And you mentioned a knowledge C database. Is that a type of SQLite database?
Yes, sir, it is.
And what are some of the things you would expect to find in a knowledge C database?
Many times in the knowledge C database, you'll see different things where you may see orientation changes. You may see if somebody pushes a button on their phone, like a power button, or it used to be a home button in the older model of iPhones. You could see different things like that. You can also see things that will talk with the power log database, where it'll show you the percent of battery life you have left. If you plug it in, you start charging it. It'll go through and look at all those kind of different things to see, or just a few of the things it'll look at.
Okay. All right, and you mentioned location storage, and that's a type of knowledge C database, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. So it's not unlimited storage for location points on a phone, correct?
Well, let me correct that. Actually, Knowledge C, you have a separate databases that do location.
Okay.
You have the cache database, you have the cache encrypted database, or just to name a few that will save location information.
All right. And so phones, depending on how the user has their settings, will store location data, correct?
Yes, sir. A user can make a selection on their phones whether they want to always give out their location only while using an app or never. It's a setting that a user gets to choose if they want, or it sets by default.
Sorry. And what are the different types of location data that a phone can store?
A phone can store many things. It can store cell towers that it's seen, depending on the database it comes out of. If it's the encrypted cache database, a lot of times it'll tell you what networks it's seen, but will not tell you the exact date and time that it has seen those networks. But it will tell you it's at some point in its life it's seen this network at this location. You have the cache database. Many times it'll go through, and that'll be pulling GPS information. You'll have also databases that'll pull cell phone tower information if it's available.
And just, again, generally speaking, would GPS location information be more accurate than something like a cell phone tower location information?
Yes, sir, it would be.
All right. And again, speaking generally, Lieutenant Dove, when you do a phone extraction, are you altering the data that you're pulling off the phone in any significant way?
And no, sir, we're not.
Okay. And how do you tell that? How can you know that for sure?
For example, if we use a phone, you use Gray Key to do the extraction on it, it'll produce a report, and in the report it'll tell us if it was successfully pulling it. It also will give us an MD5 hash value at the end, which is a mathematical algorithm that goes through and computes a very long number with letters and numbers. We can then take the extraction and run our own hash against it for an MD5 and compare it with another tool to make sure those two numbers match, and that means that no data has been altered.
Okay. And have you performed these MD5 comparisons for the three phones we're going to talk about today?
Yes, sir.
And you're confident in telling this jury that nothing you did significantly any of the data that you're going to tell them about today?
Correct.
All right. Let me ask you real quick, what is a Faraday bag?
A Faraday bag is a bag that's used to put items in that can receive cell phone, Bluetooth connections, Wi-Fi connections, GPS things. It helps to block those items from being received on the device.
Okay. And are there other ways to block a cell phone from receiving those types of signals?
Yes, sir.
And what are some of those ways?
You can also place the phone in airplane mode. In airplane mode, when you set your phone to that, you will not be able to receive any Wi-Fi connectivity or cell phone connectivity from the cell towers. You can also remove the SIM card. It's another way of ensuring that you're not receiving those things. The difference in airplane mode versus a Faraday bag is the phone will still be able to receive GPS coordinates.
Okay. All right. And what danger are we concerned about when we talk about putting a phone in a Faraday bag or in airplane mode?
That somebody could wipe the phone remotely.
Okay. And specifically, when you say somebody, who?
Anybody that would have, take an iPhone for instance, if somebody knows a user's iCloud name and password, they could get on, say the iPhone's lost or stolen, and it will wipe that phone.
And so if somebody has to have the Apple credentials, if it's an iPhone, it would have to be that person who could wipe that phone remotely, correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Well, let me ask you this. Is there a way for someone to remotely alter the phone any way short than just a full wipe?
You could do it by connecting a phone and doing an iCloud backup, for instance, with an iPhone. And then you would have to go through and remove whatever you wanted to, and then you would restore that phone to the previous iCloud backup you did. And then that way the phone would only go back to that previous state, and that's what it would show you.
Okay. But is there a way to remotely, other than the process you just talked about, is there a way to remotely access a phone and, say, alter a call log, for instance?
No, sir, not that I'm aware of.
Or any other piece of singular data on a phone? Is there a way to alter it remotely?
No, sir, not that I'm aware of.
Okay. And in terms of policy, is for SLED, is it SLED policy to collect phones and put them in a Faraday bag?
No, sir.
All right. Is there a SLED policy that governs how to collect cell phones from a crime scene or otherwhere or from elsewhere?
The manual for evidence collection through the forensic lab discusses taking a phone and place it into airplane mode if available and removing the SIM card.
All right, let's talk about time real quick. How does a cell phone time, how is it set? Let me ask you that. The
Cell
time you
phone-
see on a cell phone, how is it set?
Cell phone time is set through the provider. Most of the times the phones will come default, that they will auto set to whatever time zone you're in, along with your provider, whether it be T-Mobile, Verizon. It sets through their servers. That way they know how to bill people, and they can also check it for usage time too.
Okay. And is a cell phone kind of like my oven where I set the time and a year later it's like 10 minutes off?
No, sir, not usually, unless you went in and removed the auto times on it. But then you would see traces of that when you look at it, that somebody's changed the time zone. It will go back to the original time zone. Whereas if you drove from South Carolina to Alabama, for instance, right after you cross that state line, within a minute, your phone's going to update to that current time zone, which is an hour behind us automatically.
All right. And so when we compare two phones and we compare events on two different phones that occur, either at the same or similar times, are those time references the same?
Yes.
All right. And how are those time references synced?
They're synced through the server. Each phone is going to be synced through the server individually, and then when you look at them, you can see what time zone they were set in, along with the reports, along with looking to see, and then you can always confirm if you needed to through like call detail records or something else if you want to go another step into validating the call logs versus what it's seeing from the cell phone provider.
Okay. I'm going to show you, it's in evidence in State's Exhibit 204. 204 is... It's not ideal. It was introduced yesterday.
Stand for a moment.
All right, I'm going to show you, this is in evidence, it states Exhibit 204. And I'm going to ask you if you recognize that, sir.
Yes, sir, I do.
All right. And what is that item?
This is an iPhone that we received in case 7021-0204. It was item 1 that, when after being processed, belonged to Maggie Murdaugh.
Okay. And you received that phone. Do you recall when you received that phone?
I would have to check my notes on the actual date. It was in June, I believe it was June of 2021. I received the phone from our evidence intake at SLED.
Okay. And what did you do when you first received the phone and you went to examine it?
When I received the phone, I returned to our unit where our evidence vault is held. I logged the item in to evidence. One of the processes we have when we log items in is we take photos of the item as it comes in. If it's got a cracked screen to it, we'll photograph that. If it doesn't have it, we'll photograph that. Once the item then is photographed, we'll go through, we'll process the phone as far as for evidence, where we'll go in, we'll look at the phone, we'll pull the SIM card out if it hadn't been pulled out, we'll check the IMEI number, we'll log it into our system, we'll place stickers on the phone and on the bag itself. Once that's done, then we'll take it to our evidence vault and sign it into a shelf in our evidence vault.
Okay. I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 277. Do you recognize that, sir?
Yes, sir. This is a photo I took when I examined this item.
All right. And that item being?
Item 1, the iPhone belonging to Maggie Murdaugh.
And at this time, State will move to introduce Exhibit 277 to evidence.
Submitted.
And I'm going to show this. Are we up on the other one?
Yeah.
Okay. What is this picture of? What do we see on this picture?
This is a picture of her settings on her iPhone. I opened the settings. I went in and pulled up. It shows the name of Maggie Murdaugh has been entered as a name for the phone. It also shows that the phone has been placed in airplane mode, that the Wi-Fi connection is off, Bluetooth connection is on, cell connection is placed in airplane mode.
Okay. So this is a picture you took, correct?
Yes, sir, it is.
And did you alter any of these settings yourself?
No,
when
sir.
you access this phone?
No, sir, I did not.
And we see the phone's in airplane mode, correct?
Yes, sir.
And is that the condition you received the phone?
Yes, sir, it is.
And was it? Do you recall if it was powered off when you received it?
It was powered on when I received it.
But it was in airplane mode, correct?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to show you State's Exhibit 276. Do you recognize that, sir?
Yes, sir, I do.
And is that a picture you took?
Yes, sir, it is. It's one I took during our examination of the phone.
All right. And that's, again, Maggie's phone?
Yes, sir, it is.
All right. And at this time, State would move to introduce State's Exhibit 276 in evidence.
No objection. Did without objection.
All right. And real quick, briefly, what is that picture of?
This is a picture of one of the screens on the phone that show the different apps on there. It also shows on there that there has been notifications received to those apps, such as CVS Pharmacy. It shows the little number 1 there that has been received a notification to that app.
All right. And when you see a notification like that, what does that mean to you? What does that tell you?
That they have been, one, that they have their notifications turned on. Because if you go through and set your apps not to notify you, then you won't receive them or see them. that a notification's been turned on for that CVS app, for instance, and that she has received a notification on there.
All right, I'm going to show you, it's been marked as States Exhibit 275. And do you recognize that, sir?
Yes, sir, I do.
What is that?
This is the location service from Maggie Murdaugh's phone. During my examination, I pulled this up, and it shows whether apps and different things, if one, location service was turned on, but then two, if it was always running, if it was only while the app was being used, or it was set to never.
And at this time, State would move to introduce Exhibit 275 in evidence.
Considered without objection.
Okay, can you read that, Lieutenant Dove, on the screen?
Yes, sir, I can.
All right. And at the top, what is that? What do we see there?
At the top of it, on the left-hand side, you see the time of 12:30 with a little triangle next to it for location services. Then on the right-hand side, you see the little airplane to indicate the phone's in airplane mode. Then you see the battery, and it's hard to tell on the screen, but I believe it's yellow, it looks like, on there, that it's a low battery. Then it's the location services. It shows that location services are turned on. Then it goes down through several different apps, not all of them, but then shows like AccuWeather is set to never record locations. You got Amazon, Alexa, that's always, the App Store only while using the app, the Apple Store while using the app, Apple Watch faces while using, Apple Watch workout while using, and BCBS toolkit while using.
Okay. So these are user settings that presumably the owner of the phone would have set, correct?
Yes, sir. Majority of the time when you add a new app to your phone, it asks you, do you want to allow location services? Do you want to allow it all the time, only while using the app, or never? You can also go into your own settings and change those location services.
Okay. And for most of these apps we see on here, it seems to say that location services only be used while using. What does while using mean?
It indicates when you pull the app up and the app is in use, that's when it's recording the location that you're at. Whether it's running in the background or you pull it up and then close it completely out.
So if no one is actively using a particular app, the phone's not going to record location data, correct?
Correct, for that app, yes, sir.
For those settings where it says while using, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, I'm going to approach and show you Exhibit 278. You recognize that, sir?
Yes, sir, I do.
And what is that?
This is a picture of Maggie Murdaugh's phone I took while I was doing the examination of it, and it shows the recent call log.
So that, at this time, I would move to introduce State Exhibit 278.
Submit it.
And this is the recent call log from Maggie Murdaugh's phone, correct?
Yes, sir, correct.
And we see some entries that are red and some are black. What does that mean?
The red entries on there indicate missed calls, calls that have been received by the phone but were not answered.
And we see the word Alex followed by a numeral 5. What does that mean?
That would indicate the phone is recorded that there were 5 missed calls from the person identified as Alex in that contact list.
And in addition, we see a missed call from Buster, correct?
Yes, sir, correct.
And 2 missed calls from John Marvin. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And can we see the times or dates on this screen right now?
It shows the date on there as far as the day of the week. It does not show the calendar date or the times.
Okay. And finally, I'm going to show you Exhibit 279. Do you recognize this?
Yes, sir, I do.
What is that?
This is a photo of Maggie Murdaugh's phone. When I was doing the examination, one of the other things I did was open the messages to look at it and take a photo of that.
And that's a picture you took, correct?
Yes, sir, I took that photo.
And at this time, state would move to introduce State's Exhibit 279 today.
No objection. Admitted.
All right. And this is those recent messages for Maggie, correct?
Yes, sir, it is.
All right. And what types of messages would show up in this inbox?
In this inbox, you would receive SMS messages, a regular text message, and also MMS messages, which ones may also have a photo attached to them, would show up.
Okay. All right. And I see to the left of most of these a dot. What does that dot indicate?
That dot indicates messages that have not been read or opened.
Okay. Okay. So after you took those processing pictures of Maggie's phone, what did you do?
I continued to process the phone. I took the gray key extraction I did with the phone. I ran it through Celebrite Physical Analyzer, went through it, looked for information relevant that may help the investigators, also to see what kind of things were going on the day of June 7th, 2021. And then from there, after I finished that one, that's when I ran the extraction through Axon to try to see if I could validate what I was seeing.
Okay. And you mentioned it, but this was a full physical extraction on Maggie's phone?
It was a full file system extraction.
Okay, full file system. Okay. And you processed it in Cellbrite?
Yes, sir.
And does Cellbrite produce a full file system report?
Yes, sir, it will.
All right. And explain to the jury what that is and what it does.
A full file system report from Celebrite is going to have everything that it can decode and then put in a readable format for you. It's going to give you things like your health database stuff, like to show you your steps that you're taking, your calls that you've made or missed or received, your emails, your text messages. It's going to tell you if you connect it to a Bluetooth device. It's going to tell you if you went and were in a certain area, you have geolocation information, such as GPS information. It's also going to tell you if you have mobile payments in there, where you can look and see what cards you had in your mobile payments. Just to name a few, it will pull thousands of pages of information if you ran a full one and pulled it. It'll also give you the configurations of apps. Also give you the databases too in that report.
Okay. And you just mentioned it, but a full Cellbrite report is rather large, correct?
Yes, sir. Depending on the size of the phone and how much information is on the phone, I have seen them run over 148 gigs in size for one report.
What is a gig?
A gig is a measurement that is used for data. Most phones nowadays, when you get them, are going to go 64 gigs as your smaller end, and they go up from there to 128 or 256 or even a terabyte now. It's how much data it'll hold.
And phones, let's say just new models the phones that Apple's selling, what's a common size that's sold by Apple today?
Most of the time, people will acquire a 126 or 128 gig size. Then the next size up is the 256.
This full-size Cellbrite report that you produced for Maggie's phone, do you recall how large it is?
No, sir, not the full file system. I don't.
All right, but it's large, correct?
Yes, sir. It's if I remember correctly, it's probably about 68 gigs in total size.
And if you wanted to print everything in that report, could you approximate how many pages it would take?
No, sir. I would be venturing to guess. Looking at the timeline, for instance, in a report like that, you're probably talking about 9,000 pages just for the timeline section of that report.
All right, I'm going to show you a box. I think the marker's on the inside, so you might need to open it up, but it's State's Exhibit 280. So you can open it up and take a look at it. And what is the contents of that box, sir?
The contents of this box is a portable, solid-state external hard drive.
Okay. And is that something you've had access to before?
Yes, sir.
And what did you do with that external hard drive?
On this external hard drive, I provided a copy of the file system report from Celebrite. I placed it on this hard drive.
And for whose phone?
This is for Maggie Murdaugh's phone.
And you estimated it was in the neighborhood of about 60 gigabytes, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Plus or minus?
Yes, sir. It could be plus, probably plus that.
And that represents the full file system that you pulled off of Maggie's phone, is that correct?
Yes, sir, in a report format.
And the phone's in evidence sitting right there in front of you. Is there any significant difference in the data that's contained on that phone and contained on that hard drive, other than the ability to access it?
That's the only difference.
All right. Your Honor, at this time, State would move to introduce State's Exhibit 280 into evidence. All right, Lieutenant Dove, we just talked about if we printed all that, it would be thousands of pages, correct?
Yes, sir.
And so for today, you've printed shorter reports that we can look at and discuss for Maggie's phone, is that correct?
Yes, sir, I did.
But those reports are pulled from that full Celebrite report on that hard drive? Is that
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to show you something that's marked as State's Exhibit 281. Take a look at that, sir. And do you recognize that?
Yes, sir, I do.
What is that?
This is a report, a Celebrite report from Maggie Murdaugh's phone that was pulled just for call logs with a filter established for just June 5th, 2021 to June 7th, 2021 as parameters for this phone.
And so those are call logs that were stored on Maggie's phone, is that correct?
Yes, sir, they were.
And explain to the jury real quick, they heard from a Verizon representative this morning, what's the difference between call logs stored on that phone and call logs that might be stored by a company like Verizon?
When call logs are stored on the phone, one of the things on this report, for instance, it'll have network unknown. It's not pulling network information, so it doesn't matter whether you're using T-Mobile or Verizon for your phone. It's still going to pull the call logs. Even if you were to go and switch carriers from Verizon to T-Mobile, it would still pull the call logs from the database. One of the other things it'll do is it'll record times that the phone's receiving the call along with the amount of time that you spend on the call. It'll show if it was answered or missed on there.
Okay.
We're going to take a break.
Yes, sir.
At this time, ladies and gentlemen, if you go to the jury room, we'll take a 15-minute break.
You can see people sliding so much too. It's a bridge, so that's why there's such a big problem here.
Trial of South Carolina versus Alec Murdaugh for a double homicide. Stay with us.
$20 likes away from 5,000. Thanks, you guys. Wow. Wow. We're back. Thank you, everybody. Yeah, it is botched a little bit. Because a lot of those videos are just saved on my iCloud. We did it! Thanks, everybody. Jeez, that's incredible. Thanks, you guys. The heavy freezing rain is coming back in now. The freezing rain is moving back in here as we are stuck in a traffic jam on I-30 right on top of a reservoir. Here it comes. We need the bonding unit. Weather chasing Jason, thank you for always supporting.
Cell phone. He processed these and is testifying about all of the data that was extracted from these. So we're really just getting into the meat and potatoes of his testimony. He outlined his resume, very long resume. He's got a lot of credentials in this area. And one of the things he was asked about by the prosecution is something that's been brought up by the defense on a few occasions in this trial, and it was whether or not the cell phones, in this case, particularly Maggie Murdaugh's cell phone, was placed in what's called a Faraday bag. And that's a bag that you can put it in that basically acts like a shield for it and prevents it from being wiped or altered remotely by someone. And he was asked by the prosecution, because the defense contends these phones were not put in Faraday bags and should have been. He was asked by the prosecution what SLED protocol is for collecting these devices and whether Faraday bags are used and must be used.
The difference in airplane mode versus a Faraday bag is the phone will still be able to receive GPS coordinates.
Okay. All right. And what danger are we concerned about when we talk about putting a phone in a Faraday bag or in airplane mode?
That somebody can wipe the phone remotely.
Okay. And specifically, when you say somebody, who?
Anybody that would have, take an iPhone for instance, if somebody knows a user's iCloud name and password, they could get on, say the iPhone's lost or stolen, and it will wipe that phone.
Okay. And so if somebody has to have the Apple credentials, if it's an iPhone, it would have to be that person who could wipe that phone remotely, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So there you have it. The phone could be altered using the cloud or the Apple ID, but there would have to be some steps taken to do that. And he was talking about how in airplane mode, this phone can still receive GPS information or send it. So that's the difference there. And he said basically it was SLED protocol to put phones when they're collected in airplane mode. So data can't be altered that way.
Yeah, and Jeanette, I've been involved in cases where they have used Faraday bags because the mere process of turning a phone on and off, according to some testimony in cases I've been involved with, can change what is in the phone. So that's why, law enforcement uses these all the time. Why doesn't SLED use them? Did anyone ask, like Mr. Harpootlian?
He hasn't asked that just yet. Maybe that will be asked on cross-examination, but he certainly is the one who brought up the Faraday bag last Friday when questioning the SLED agent who collected the phone, or at least obtained it from another agent. She then transported it to the lab for SLED, and she put it in a paper bag, she said, and Dick Harpootlian questioned her about whether she used a Faraday bag, and she said no, she put it in a paper bag, and he said, well, you didn't treat this any differently than a can of pork and beans, and everybody thought that was a pretty good line, and she said, well, not if the pork and beans were evidence, so I guess she would have put a can of pork and beans in a paper bag as well. But a cell phone, a can of pork and beans, two different things, and no one has posed that question to SLED just yet. Maybe in the cross-examination of Lieutenant Dove, we will get that answer.
And Jeanette, I just have one other question for you, because we are here, and for us, this tragedy is almost like a patent place, though, with so much going on. What's the mood in the courtroom? What's the jury doing? Because you get to see them.
I do look at them. I kind of have to twist myself around a little bit to really get a look at them. I'm pretty far back based on where we are seated, but they are just listening intently. I see a lot of this. It's like watching a tennis match sometimes in court. The heads go back and forth between the lawyer doing the questioning and the witness, but they are listening intently. And I haven't seen any visible facial reactions, maybe, looking a little quizzical at times, maybe a little confused during some of the questioning, but really not much. They seem to be paying very close attention to what's being said.
And Jeanette Levy,
and the mood is pretty heavy, I should say. Oh, sorry,
no,
Linda,
go ahead,
I'm so sorry. The mood is it's a little bit heavy in there, but at times it's a little bit light because people will chuckle at some of the things that are being said. And when I say things that are being said, I'm more talking about the questioning by some of the lawyers, and then there have been some kind of stunned reactions based on some of the answers provided by the witnesses. This morning, the whole whether or not Alec Murdaugh said, I did him bad or they did him bad. Some people were kind of making some noises like they were surprised by Special Agent Croft's response that he insisted still that he heard him say, I did him bad and not they, even though that clip was played and slowed down again.
And Jeanette, I'm going to actually play that clip, but I have to sign you off and say goodbye until tomorrow, where I can't wait to speak to you about what will happen in the courtroom. Will be the next thing that we'll be talking about. Thank you so very much.
Thanks, Linda.
And Anjanette mentioned Special Agent Jeff Croft, who was on cross-examination, who discussed whether or not Alec Murdaugh had confessed in a statement he gave police. It took the internet asunder. Everyone was talking about it. Why don't we listen to this cross-examination and then we'll talk.
All right, let's play it. Please, Doug. Exhibit 243 in evidence.
It's tough. It was just so bad. They did it so bad.
All right. Back it up and play it in real time again, Doug. Real time.
Or not easy. I know it's hard. And sitting here talking today is tough. It was just so bad. They did it so bad.
Stop. Did you hear now, they or I?
I will still testify that my hearing, I hear I.
Your Honor, we'd like to play it again at 1/3 speed to slow it down. It's just the same. Thank you.
Your Honor, I reject playing it at 1/3 speed. When the foundation laid for who's manipulating it, how it's being manipulated. I think obviously we have it in real time, but there would have to be some additional foundation.
Please play at 1/3 speed.
And sitting here talking today is tough. It's just so bad. They did it so bad.
Did you hear they then?
No, sir, I did not.
Okay. You would agree the jury gets to decide what he said on that tape. That's the best evidence.
I agree that they get to hear the tape and make their own mind up as to what he said. Yes, sir.
Thank you. That's all I have on that. Now, I said the date August 11th. You said you weren't sure, but there was another interview with Alec Murdaugh came to the SLED Low Country office, and you and Agent Owen sat down and interviewed him, correct?
That is correct.
Darren Gelber, trial lawyer extraordinaire, former prosecutor. Okay, let's talk about this because, you know, the prosecutor didn't open by saying Alec Murdaugh confessed in any statement to the police. Now we have this alleged confession that now is all over social media. I heard they did it so bad. I didn't hear I. And I'm not an apologist for Alec Murdaugh or his team. I'm just telling you what I hear with my own ears. If I'm the defense attorneys, though, I am now sending a Brady-specific letter, and I think I tweeted this, to the prosecution. I want every single transcription that they did of that statement to see whether they ever put I in any transcription to that statement. That's the first question to you. It has a part B, a comma. The part B is the agent won't concede now that he heard I, even though it wasn't in any of his reports.
So I heard they also, and the tactic of playing it at the reduced speed was very helpful. That's where you really hear the they come out. And I think the witness on the stand is not doing himself any favors by just repeating, no, it's I stick by I. The fact is, and he is in no better position than anybody else to judge what was said in that recording. And that's going to be a point hammered home during closing arguments for sure if the state wants to pursue this as an alleged confession. That it's not an alleged confession unless the jury thinks he said I. And I don't think these jurors, much like the rest of us, are going to think that there's any compelling evidence that he really said I. And why won't the witness just give it up, okay? Why can't the witness just say, well, listen, I think it's I, but I could see how somebody might here they, it's not exactly 1,000% clear. At least he would maintain some credibility there. But when he just says, no, it's I hear it's definitely I think the rest of his testimony is now suspect. So I don't know why he would stick with that.
Yeah, and I'd be sending that Brady letter out. I'd be hammering it home and following it up with another Brady letter if I didn't get an answer for any transcript. And then I'd have motions for sanctions. But that's how I try cases. You know me very well. Anyhow, all right. Now, there's also something I want to talk to you about. The law enforcement had a berm behind a shooting house that they practiced shooting across from the hunting lodge. At that shooting house, they took like the casings from cartridges that had been fired, you know, where the bullet ejected into the berm. But they never dug into that berm to get any bullets to see if they could have a better match, even though they don't have a gun. But on the assumption that maybe sometime they would have a gun. Is that going to hurt the prosecution? And I recall back, and I bring you back to a case of about 2 decades ago, the Washington, D.C. sniper, where they dug bullets out of a tree, you know, in case they were able to get some kind of match later on. Talk to us, please.
Sure, why not? Why wouldn't a complete, thorough, diligent investigation, why wouldn't they retrieve those bullets? Because they could have evidential value. And what's the harm in digging those up and keeping them? That would show that they're being diligent. That would show they're being fair. That would show that they're being impartial. And if they want to get to the truth, it's, in my mind, just sloppy.
Yeah, and juries don't like sloppy police work, although the counter to that here is that everyone may know about Alec Murdaugh here, and maybe that's infiltrating that jury pool, even though people say they could be fair. But that's something we'll talk about in the future. Anyhow, we're going to take a quick break here at the Law and Crime Network. Right when we come back, we'll be discussing and maybe back into that courtroom in South Carolina where Alec Murdaugh is charged with the murder, the horrendous murder, the slaughter of his son Paul, and the killing of his wife Maggie. Stay with us.
If you'll bring the jury, please. Thank you. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. I believe we were discussing State's Exhibit 281 before the break. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And what was that again?
This is a Celebrate report from Maggie Murdaugh's iPhone extraction. It has just call logs for the date range of 6/5/2021 to 6/7/2021.
Okay. And I believe you said it contains information, the date and time a call was made, correct?
Yes, sir, it does.
Whether it was outgoing or incoming call, correct?
Yes, sir.
And whether a call was answered or not, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. And at this time, State will move to introduce State's Exhibit 281 into evidence.
Okay. Submit it.
All right. This report is 20 pages long, correct?
Yes, sir.
And we're not going to go through line by line every call, but I'm going to focus on, can I have the Elmo, please? Okay. Let's take a look at Maggie's call log from the night of June 7th. All right. Can you read that from your screen up there, sir?
Yes, sir. I can read down to item 8 on that.
Okay, and actually, we're going to go back a little bit more in time. All right, and let's look at line 14 on this report. Do you see that, sir?
Yes, sir, I can.
All right. And first of all, when I say line 14, what am I referring to on there?
On the left-hand side of the picture, there's a column, and when you build a report, it adds the numbers just to make it easier to keep track of in that report. If you added this report with another piece of item, whether it's text messaging or voicemails, it would change the numbers.
Okay. And on line 14, what is that data entry? What does that represent?
It represents a call that was outgoing on this phone.
All right. And we see a number. Don't read the number, but we see a number and a name below it in the second column there. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And what's that name?
Barbara.
Okay. And did you say that this is an outgoing call or an incoming call?
It shows the direction as an outgoing call.
Okay. Now, I look at line 13, and I see another entry that says Barbara. What is that?
That is the same call. It's entered in 2 different databases, and it pulls from both databases because it's both call logs.
All right. And so there's 2 databases for call logs on Maggie's phone? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir.
And just briefly, what does that mean? There's 2 different logs.
There's several different SQLite databases in a phone, and it's going to contain the information in different places. One may be recent calls. One may be calls that are considered past the recent step that's set in the database, so that it's going to be in the call logs, but it's not going to be in the recent. Sometimes you'll see them in both databases, recent and the call logs.
Okay. All right. And so what time is that call that you see on the entry there, lines 13 and line 14?
At line 13, it's on 6/7/2021 at 7:50, 19 seconds p.m. -4 UTC.
Okay. So that's 7:50 p.m. Eastern time, correct?
Yes, sir, it is.
And in the next column, we see a number, and it says 246. What does that mean?
That is the duration of the call.
Okay. So at 7:50 p.m., Maggie placed a call to Barbara. Is that correct? That lasted 2 minutes and 46 seconds.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And we see a slight time difference between line 13 and line 14. It's about 4 seconds. And that's just simply the different way the different logs record the data?
Yes, sir, it's because they're going into different databases, so there is a lag in that.
But your testimony today is, what is the exact time that call was placed to Barbara?
That call was placed to Barbara at 6/7/2021 at 7:50, 19 p.m.
Okay. In your review of Maggie's call logs, was this the last answer, or excuse me, the last phone call that was either dialed or answered by someone on Maggie's phone?
I would have to check the logs again,
Sure.
but I believe so.
I'll let you know that. Take a look.
Yes, sir, that's correct. That's the last answered call or one that was shown in the direction of outgoing.
All right. No more outgoing calls that night, correct?
No, sir,
June 7th?
correct.
And no more answer calls the night of June 7th. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. look at lines 9 and 10. I don't know if you can see that on your. I got it reversed. My bad. There we go. Okay, let's look at lines 9. I can't quite see the line. You can see line 10, correct?
Yes, sir, I can.
And there's a staple there, but above that should be line 9, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. And then we also see lines 11 and 12, correct?
Yes, sir, we do.
All right. And what do lines 11 and 12 show?
They show that the phone from Maggie Murdaugh received a phone call from 1-803-942-1227. On line 11, it has the name Alex associated with it. Shows the direction as incoming.
I can't quite see the line. You can see line. Was that call answered?
Yes, sir. No, sir.
And there's a staple. And again, we see 2 line entries for the same call. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
However, there's a difference. One line 11 says Alex, and line 12 says PA. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
But they're the same number, though, correct?
Yes, sir, they are.
And again, briefly explain why we see a Alex and a PA between those 2 lines.
Because they're 2 separate databases that these are entered into. And when you set up your contact list, you can go through, and if you wanted to set a name for either a spouse, a child, or a good friend, you can set it how you want it to be. And that's going to show up from the contact side of it.
Okay. But it's the same call, correct?
Yes, sir. It's the same call, same phone number that it was received from.
Okay. Let's look at line 10 and 9 directly above that. Again, the 9 is slightly obscured. But what do we see there? What activity do those 2 lines represent?
Those 2 lines show calls from 1-803-942-1227. Line 10 has it as PA. Direction shows an incoming call, and it shows it as a missed call.
Okay. And again, it's Alex and PA, but it's the same number ending in 1227, correct?
Yes, sir, correct.
And you've had an opportunity to examine a phone associated with 1227, correct?
Yes, sir, I have.
And whose phone is that?
That was Alex Murdaugh's.
And again, that time is what? All right, and the 2 times you see in line 10 and 9, can you read those times in those two blocks? And are they the same?
Yes, sir, they are the same. It is 6/7/2021 at 9:06:14 p.m. UTC -4.
Okay. And that's local time, 9:06, correct?
Yes, sir, that's local time.
And 14 seconds, correct?
Yes, sir.
Oh, all right. And let's read the times for line 11, 12. That's that first call from Alex. What are the times for the call that's associated with lines 11 and 12?
They are the same time. It is 6/7/2021 at 9:04:23 p.m. UTC -4.
All right, we're going to talk about a few more lines here. Let's talk about lines 7 and 8 on this report. And what does this information show?
It shows a phone call of 1-803-942-1227. On line 7, it has the name of Alex. Direction shows incoming, and it shows that it was a missed call received on 6/7/2021 at 9:06:51 p.m. UTC -4.
All right. And again, those are 2 lines associated with the same call, correct?
Yes, sir.
And so just reviewing, within the space of about 2 minutes, you see 3 separate calls from Alex's phone incoming into Maggie's phone. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
All right. And after that 90651 call on line 7 and 8, what's the next call you see on this log?
Moving up the call log, the next call I see is from 1-803-942-1227. On line 5, it has the name of Alex. The time received on that call is at 9:45:32 p.m. UTC -4.
All right. And that's lines 5 and 6, correct?
Yes, sir.
For the same call, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. And finally, let's talk about lines 3 and 4. What information do you see there?
On lines 3 and 4, they're the same call from 1-803-942-1227. On line 4, it shows it as PA. Direction is an incoming call, and it was received at 10:03:58 p.m. UTC -4 as a missed call.
All right. And to clarify, these last 5 calls from Alex, were any of them answered?
No, sir.
And previously, we looked at when you took pictures of Maggie's phone, you took a picture of her call log, correct?
Yes, sir, I did.
All right. And I'm showing you again. I'm going to put it up on the screen. It's been admitted, Exhibit 278. And we saw that in numeral 5 next to Alex's name, correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And that represents 5 missed calls.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And I don't know if you're doing math while we went through that, and we can look at it again if you'd like, Lieutenant Dove. But did you count the calls from Alex that were missed in a row as we went through that call log?
Yes, sir, I came up with 5.
Okay. And since I had that picture up there, when you access Maggie's phone to take these pictures and to go through some of these screens, did you change any settings?
No, sir. The extraction had already been done at the point I took these photos.
Okay, so the extraction actually was done before these pictures.
Yes, sir.
All right. But even after, did you change any settings or open up any calls to make anything difference on the phone?
No, sir, I did not.
And just looking at Maggie's call log on the phone itself again, this is still 278. We talked about calls with Barbara that were 7:50 p.m. on the call log, correct?
Yes, sir.
And looking at this screen, we see a call before that, before Barbara, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And who is that name on that call?
Marianne?
Okay. And was that a completed call?
Yes, sir. It shows as a completed call, not a missed call.
Okay. And can you look at the screen, and maybe you can't, can you tell from this screen itself whether it was an incoming or outgoing call?
No, sir. I cannot tell for sure from the screen.
If we looked at it on the call log we just talked about on Exhibit 281, you'd be able to tell that information, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Okay, so let's move on. Let's talk about Maggie's text message report. I'm going to show you something that's marked as Exhibit 282. Do you recognize that, sir?
Yes, sir, I do.
What is that?
This is a Celebrate report I produced from Maggie Murdaugh's phone that has text messages with a report filter that was set from June 7th, 2021 to June 7th, 2021 for just a 1 day's worth of text messaging.
And what kind of information does that report have on it?
General information it has on the beginning of the report is going to have information about the device as far as the Apple ID and what the name is that's associated with the phone, the type of phone, just general data as far as device information. On the other pages, you'll see text messaging that's on the phone, who they were from, the text message, the date, and it'll also show the status if it was read or an unread message.
And when you look to see if it was read or unread, if a message had been read, would the phone record that time and date the message was read?
Yes, sir, it does.
At this point, the state's going to move to introduce State's Exhibit 282.
Submitted.
Thank you. All right. Now, let's talk a little bit about how the text messages are organized in this report. Is it strictly chronological through?
No, sir, not always. Sometimes they can get a little out of order, depending on when the text messaging and the filters you set on the report.
Okay, and how did you set that up on this report? I can get back to you to look at.
On this report, it appears to have pulled chronologically, but it's also pulling instant messages versus chat messages, and they are coming from different databases.
Okay. So if it came from a different database, it's separate, but all the SMSs should be in chronological order, correct?
Yes, sir.
So let's look at a few texts here. Okay. This is page 31 of this report. All right. Can you read that at the bottom then? Is that readable?
Just part of the bottom is readable.
Sorry, I was looking at the wrong one. Okay. And what is this?
This is appears to be a group text message that was received on this phone from one individual to several other individuals.
Let's not read numbers, but most of these had names next to them. So who sent this message?
It appears it has it down as John Marvin.
Okay. And who else is in this text group?
Maggie Murdaugh appears in this, but it has her user account name, which is a Yahoo email address.
Okay.
It has Alex, Christy, Lynn, Alan, Liz, and it has one phone number that does not have a name associated with it.
Okay. All right. And what time did this text message arrive on Maggie's phone?
It appears that the text message was received 6/7/2021 at 8:31 p.m. UTC -4.
I think without defense objection, the state's going to move to seal this as per the evidence per the previous protocol.
Your Honor, and I understand that to protect the phone numbers and email addresses of the other folks on here. We have no objection.
Is that correct?
No objection to sealing the phone numbers, Your Honor.
Okay. All right. Now, look, real quick again, what time did that text arrive on Maggie's phone?
It shows at the bottom of it, it's 6/7/2021 at 8:31 p.m. UTC -4.
Okay. All right. And was that text message read?
Yes, it shows it as read.
Okay. And what time was it read?
It shows it as read on 6/7/2021 at 8:31:16 p.m. UTC -4.
So about 16 seconds later. Correct?
Yes, sir.
Can you read this text message, please?
Yes, sir. It says, I plan to go over to visit Dad tomorrow afternoon. Is anyone else planning to go?
All right. And that's from John Marvin, correct?
Yes, sir.
And we're not going to go back and look at the previous text in this thread, but what is the general topic that they're discussing, just for context for the jury?
It appears that they're talking about going to visit Dad tomorrow and trying to find out if anybody else plans to go over with them at any time.
And this is a response to a series of texts about Randolph, Alex's dad, and his health, correct?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to turn over to page 32, and we see another text. And this is that same text group, correct?
Yes, sir, it is.
And this is another text that arrived on Maggie's phone, correct?
Yes, sir, it did.
Who sent that text?
It looks like Lynn G.
All right. And what does it say?
It says, "I'm in court all week," with an emoji.
Okay. All right. Was this text read?
Yes, sir. It shows it as read at 8:49:27 p.m. UTC -4 on 6/7/2021.
Okay. I'm going to hand this report back to you and have you help me find. I believe Maggie receives a text later, and it might be from Rogan. Could you find that text in there for me, please?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I've located it.
Okay. What time did that text arrive on her phone?
That text arrived on 6/7/2021 at 9:34:14 p.m. UTC -4.
Let me see. All right. And that text is from who?
That text, it says it's from Rogan.
And that's at least what the call or the apps, or excuse me, the contact list says.
Yes, sir. That's the name that was entered in the contact list associated with that phone number.
And that arrived on Maggie's phone when?
On 6/7/2021 at 9:34:14 p.m. UTC -4.
And was that text ever read?
No, sir. It appears as a status of unread.
Okay. Now let's be clear about something, Lieutenant Dove. You know, when we say a text is read or a call is answered, can you know for certain from your forensic analysis of who the actual person was who answered a call or made a call or read a text?
No, sir. I cannot tell you who did it. I can tell you that the phone has the information. The phone recorded certain information, but I can't tell you who's actually touching the screen or pushing the buttons on it.
Okay. But in order to place a call or to place a text or to read a text, what condition has to be satisfied? All right, we'll continue for now. Where was I? What condition has to be satisfied in order for someone to make a call on a phone?
Unless you're making an emergency call, like a 911 call, you would need to know the passcode to be able to unlock the phone to get to the contact list or either to the number pad to dial the number.
All right, so you need to know the passcode, correct?
Yes, sir.
To unlock the phone, correct?
Yes, sir.
And are there other ways to lock these phones or unlock these phones?
There's also, too, with iPhones, which this one was, there's the biometric way of doing it. If you set a face unlock, where instead of having to enter your passcode every time, you can look at it, the camera will activate, and then it'll unlock via your face.
All right. So that was 282. Can I see 282 again? I'm going to show you, I believe there's some texts from Alex that Maggie received that night. Can you find those in that report, sir?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I found the text thread.
Okay. All right.
What's the beginning?
All right, let's look at page 16. And can you read that, sir?
Are you referring to the bottom text on that one?
Yes.
Yes, sir, I can.
Okay.
Yes, sir, I
All right,
found the text.
and who's that text from?
It's from Alex.
All right, and it was sent to Maggie's phone, correct?
Yes, sir, it was.
At what time did that arrive on Maggie's phone?
It shows 6/7/2021 at 9:08:58 p.m. UTC -4.
Okay. And was that text ever read?
No, sir, it shows the status is unread.
All right. And I can hand you back the report if you need to refer to it again. But we previously discussed a text at 8:49 and 27 that from Lynn G, I believe, that was read, correct?
Yes, sir.
Is there any texts that arrived on Maggie's phone after that time that were read?
No, sir, there was not.
Okay. And I'm going to hand you, it's been marked as State's Exhibit 282. And I'm going to ask if you recognize that, sir.
Yes, sir, I do.
What is that?
This is a Cellbrite report that I produced from Maggie Murdaugh's phone. It has on there device events from her phone with a date range filter placed on it for the day of 6/7/2021.
Okay. All right. And what kind of information is contained in that report?
In this report, it's going to have different information in there as far as activity. It'll have location information in there. It'll also have whether the phone was unlocked, if it was locked, if there's orientation changes. It'll also pull if it was plugged in, whether to a car or to the wall to charge.
And most of this is information that's stored in those databases we discussed previously, correct?
Yes, sir. Most of this information is in the Knowledge C database.
Okay. Beg court's indulgence. And how many pages is this report?
I don't remember offhand. I think it could be 87. I can't remember if that's the 87-page report that I produced for that one.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to direct your attention, if you can read that, to line 4336. Do you see that at the bottom, sir?
Yes, sir, I do.
And what information is contained on line 4336?
It has the first column has the number, then it has device events. The next column that's populated has a date of 6/7/2021, 8:17:15 p.m. UTC -4 start time. Then the column, 2 columns over, it has unplugged, and this information was obtained from the Knowledge C database.
What does unplugged mean?
It would indicate that the phone was unplugged, whether from a vehicle or from a wall or a computer that it was charging.
And I'm going to show you again States 283. And you previously explained that as a report you prepared off of Maggie's Cellbrite phone, correct?
Yes, sir.
And it's a timeline report, correct?
Yes, sir, the device events.
And at this time, State would move to introduce Exhibit 283 into evidence.
Okay.
Did it?
Okay, I'm going to direct your attention to line 4354. Can you see line 4534?
Yes, sir, I can see 4354.
And what's the date and time associated with that log?
4354, the date associated is 6/7/2021 at 8:30:23 p.m. UTC -4.
And what is that data entry?
That entry shows Poshmark buy and sell fashions.
Would that be a website?
Yes, sir.
And what does that indicate to you was occurring on his phone at that time?
That it was possibly running in the background.
Okay. Would this be a website that had been previously accessed on his phone?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm going to show you a series of entries starting at 4404 here. I want to see if you can read that up there. Can you read 4404?
Yes, sir.
All right. And above that is 4403, correct?
Yes, sir.
And what is that line entry we see at 4403?
It shows that the display was on, and that was obtained from the Knowledge Seed database.
Okay. And then, and that, this is all June 7, 2021, correct?
Yes, sir. And the time on that one is at 8:49:20 p.m. UTC -4. It shows as a start time.
Well, let's talk about that for a minute. Display on, what does that mean?
It's when your screen lights up. It's the easiest way I can describe it. And there can be a variety of reasons why it would light up.
All right. Well, let's talk about some reasons. Why don't you list some, please?
If you receive a notification, whether it's a call, a text message, if you have it set to receive notifications from an app, like the CBS app that was previously on there, you receive those notifications, your screen, if it's your phone sitting down and not being used, it'll light up to let you know that you received the notification. It can also it can light up if you have too much vibration sometimes. If you're walking around tossing your phone up and down, sometimes it can light up. There's various reasons what could cause it to light up.
Could bumping the phone light up the screen?
Yes, sir, it could.
Could picking a phone up light up the screen?
Yes, sir.
So of those reasons you gave, some of them sound like there could be human caused, correct?
Yes, sir.
And some of them sound like could be processes that are on the phone itself and requires no external human interaction, correct?
Correct.
All right. So bumping a phone, that's a human interaction. If someone physically bumps the phone, correct?
Yes, sir.
But if a notification comes in and the screen lights up, is that something necessarily the user caused?
No, sir.
So it could just happen on its own?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So let's look at line 4404, the line below that. And I think we've got the date established, but what time is that line at on line 4404?
It shows a time of 8:49:26 p.m. UTC -4 as a start time.
And what kind of data entry is that?
It appears to be an SMS or a text message that the phone was processing.
Okay. And then below that, on line 4405, we see a device event, correct?
Yes, sir.
And at the same time, correct?
Yes, sir.
And what does it say?
It says that was the 8:49:26 p.m. is an end time, and it shows device locked.
Okay, well, let's look at 4406 below it. What kind of event is that?
That shows an event of the device unlocked.
Okay, so the phone's unlocked at 8:49:26, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then at line below that, 4407, we see the display is back on, correct?
Yes, sir. It shows display on.
Well, what did we just previously talk about that happened at 8:49:27?
That's when a text message was received.
Was it received or read at that point?
I would have to go back and look at the report. I believe it was read.
Okay. It was read?
Yes, sir.
And so when you see this sequence of events on this timeline log, what would you associate that with, knowing the fact that there was a text message read at that time?
That a text message was received on the phone, that the phone was unlocked to read the text message.
Okay. And I think I might find that report again, which is, just to refresh your memory, 279. That's the wrong one, sorry. 282, my apologies, 282. Just to refresh your memory, why don't you go back and look at that event at 8:49:27. I believe it was the text thread from the family members.
Yes, sir, I found it.
And what time did that text message arrive on the phone?
It arrived at 8:31:47 p.m.
All right. And what time is it read?
It's read at 8:49:27 p.m.
Okay. And so just so we don't get things confused or mixed up, that text message had been on the phone for a few minutes anyway by that point, correct?
Yes, sir.
But it wasn't read until 8:49:27, correct?
Correct.
All right, let's keep going here for a minute. All right, let's look at line 4409. Do you see that line on your screen, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and what is this line? What does this represent?
This is a line that indicates the start of an orientation change of the phone.
Okay, and what is an orientation change?
An orientation change would be if you take your phone, it's considered portrait if you're holding it straight up. If you turn it to the side, it's considered landscape, and that would be changing the orientation of it from straight up to sideways.
So what can cause an orientation change?
It would have to be somebody moving the phone. As far as if I'm holding my phone up to talk to somebody or to look at something on there scrolling, and then I hold it down by my side, it's going to cause it to change orientation. Or if I rotate it in my hand to watch a video, it's going to cause an orientation change.
So could picking up a phone to read a text message cause an orientation change?
Yes, sir, depending on where you're holding it to start with.
And can you think of any process on a phone that will cause an orientation change to log other than a human holding the phone?
No, sir, not that I've seen.
Well, one possibility I'm going to ask you about is if, say, a phone's dropped, could that cause an orientation change?
It would have to tumble end over end, like down steps, for instance, and it would have to be on to be able to record that orientation change.
Okay. All right. Let's go down to line 4412. You see that, sir? I'll screw you up.
Yes, sir, I do.
And what does that line show?
That line shows the start time of the device being locked.
Okay, and what time is that?
It's at 8:49:31 p.m. UTC -4.
All right. and I can hand this phone to you, or excuse me, this report back to you. We'll come back to this, that line again in a minute. But I'm having you look through this report. So the phone was locked at 8:49:31, correct?
Yes, sir.
Can you look in that report and determine if at any point later that night the phone was unlocked?
I do see on here where it does show that the lock stage ended on 6/8/2021 at 1:10:35 p.m. UTC -4.
And that's the next day, correct?
Yes, sir. That's the next afternoon at 1:10 p.m.
Okay, so that phone was locked between 8:49:31 and 1:10 p.m. the next day, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, and I'm going to go right back to look at line 4414. Excuse me, 4413. We just discussed 4412, which is the phone being locked at 8:49:31, correct?
Yes, sir.
Do you see any entries? What time is the next entry on this report?
Could you repeat which number you're looking at?
On line 4412, we see the phone is locked at 8:49:31, which is what you just testified to, correct?
Yes, sir.
What time is the next event on this log?
The next event on the log shows a display off at 8:53:08 p.m.
Okay. Is there anything that occurred on this report between those two times on this phone?
Not on the device activities report or the device event report.
Okay. And at 8:53:08, what do we see?
We see that it's the end time for the display off.
Okay, and that's line 4413.
Yes, sir.
And then we see at 4414, what happened?
It's an orientation change.
Okay. And at 4415, what happens?
The display comes on.
Okay. You just said it was an orientation change, correct?
Yes, sir.
And what does that, from your expert opinion, tell you is going on with this phone?
It's an end time for an orientation change from landscape. In my opinion, the phone's going from being landscaped, being held like this in a position like this, to going into the portrait position, which is up.
And you previously testified that there's only a very small number of things that can cause an orientation change, correct?
Correct.
And it's most likely that that's a human-caused event, correct?
Correct.
However, you can't testify to today as to who held that phone at that time, correct?
Correct.
All right. And let's keep going here for a little bit. We're at 8:53:12, and excuse me, 8:53:24. And that's line 4417. What do you see again?
It shows an end time for orientation change from portrait.
Okay. And then we see lines 4418 and 4419, we see the display come on and off, correct?
Yes, sir. It shows the end time of display on, and then it shows the start time of display off.
All right, we'll go to the bottom of that page and we'll look at lines 4428 and 4427. What do you see there, sir?
On 4428, it shows the start time at 8:54:40 p.m. of the orientation change to landscape. At 4429, it shows the end time, which is at 8:54:44 p.m. orientation change from landscape.
And my apologies, I meant to direct you to lines 4426 and 4427. What do you see in those lines?
On those lines, it shows at 8:54:34 p.m. It shows the start time of the camera in the phone.
All right. And how long is that camera on for, that you can tell?
It appears to be on for 59 seconds. Or, yes, 59 seconds. I'm sorry, 1 second.
1 second.
I'm sorry, doing math sometimes gets me.
It's okay. All right, so that camera's on for 1 second. In your opinion, what does that tell you is happening on this phone?
It appears the phone's being moved and the camera's activating in the background to see if it would recognize somebody's face that would unlock it.
So the phone is attempting to face unlock, correct?
Yes, sir, that's what it appears.
But you just testified that after 8:49:31, the phone never unlocked, correct?
Correct.
So with this camera entry, does the phone successfully unlock?
No, sir.
Now, can you tell us what that camera was looking at? Do you have any data that would suggest specifically what the camera was looking at?
No, sir, I don't know what the camera was being pointed at.
So it could be looking at the ground,
Yes, sir.
the sky,
Yes, sir.
somebody's face other than Maggie Murdaugh.
Yes, sir.
But if that camera had seen Maggie Murdaugh's face, what would you expect to happen?
I would expect for it to unlock.
Okay, let's keep going. All right, let's look at line 4434, and this is at time 8:55:32. What do you see there, sir?
It shows the end time for orientation portrait, which means it was ending in that orientation.
Okay. So again, at that time, would it be your opinion that phone was held in somebody's hand?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and let's look real quick at the bottom of that page, and that's line 4441. And what is that information there?
And 4441 comes from the activity sensor data, and that's at 9 o'clock even p.m. And it shows steps. It also shows distance traveled.
Okay. And let's talk about the steps for a minute. You've produced another report that specifically focused on steps that you pulled from this phone, correct?
Yes, sir, correct.
And that shows more granular data of when steps occurred than this report shows, correct?
Correct.
And so just because we see 9 o'clock on this report, does that mean that steps occurred exactly at 9 o'clock on this phone?
No, sir. It's the 2 after the 9 o'clock on that, which means it would be a range as far as example would be like 9 to 10 for the total steps.
And you prepared another report that would show specific steps during a specific time range, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. going. All right, let's look at line 4447. What do you see there?
4447 shows from the call log database an incoming call at 9:04:23 p.m.
Okay, and who's that call from?
It's from phone number 1-803-942-1227 PA.
And that's the call that we discussed in Maggie's specific call log, correct?
Yes, sir, it is.
And that's at 9:04:23, correct?
Yes, sir.
And was that call answered?
No, sir, it showed no time that call was answered.
All right, let's look at the bottom of that page, line 4454, at 9:06:12. What do we see there?
At 9:06:12 shows the start time of an orientation change to portrait.
Okay. And again, in your opinion, what does that tell you about whether this phone is in someone's hand?
In my opinion, it would be in somebody's hand that was changing it from landscape up to portrait, lifting it.
And that's at 9:06:12, correct?
Yes, sir.
Let's go to line 4456. Can you read that, sir?
Yes, sir, I can.
Okay. And line 4457. What
Yes,
is
sir.
line 4456 and 57 associated with?
They're associated with a phone call that was incoming to Maggie's phone.
Okay. And what is the time on that call?
It's at 9:06:14 p.m.
2 seconds after that orientation change, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that call came after the orientation change, correct?
Yes, sir.
And again, you can't tell us whose phone, or your digital forensics can't tell us whose hand that phone was in at that point.
Correct.
All you could tell us was the phone was locked at that point, correct?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to hand this back to you, and I want you to review this report. And I want to have you tell us if that is the final orientation change in 9:06:12 or not. See if you see any further orientation changes after that point.
I do see the end time for the orientation of portrait that it recorded.
Okay, what time was that?
It was at 9:06:20 p.m.
Okay. And when you say end time, what do you mean?
It's just the time that it recorded that it stopped in recording that portrait mode. It
So you
does
saw
not.
the excuse me, I don't mean to interrupt. Please finish.
I'm sorry. I was going to say I don't see any orientation change to landscape after that in this report.
Okay. So at 9:06:12, the orientation change starts, correct?
Yes, sir.
At 9:06:14, there's an incoming call from Alex, correct?
Yes, sir.
And after that point, you do not see any more orientation changes, correct?
Correct.
All right. Let me direct your attention. Excuse me. You talked about the 9:06:20 orientation change in time, correct?
Yes, sir.
And then we see at line 4461 another incoming call, correct?
Yes, sir. That was at 9:06:51 p.m. and that was from 1-803-942-1227 PA.
And that's Alex's phone, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that's the third phone call within about 2 minutes from Alex, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. And I see an entry at line 4464 at 9:07. Do you see that, sir?
Yes, sir, I do.
And that's a display on and off, correct?
Yes, sir.
And we've already discussed there could be a number of reasons for that display coming on and off, correct?
Yes, sir.
And the data you see on the phone is not going to be able to tell you exactly why that screen came on, will it?
Correct.
All right. Line 4466. What is this?
4466 shows a text message received incoming at 9:08:58 p.m. From the phone number 1-803-942-1227 Alex to Maggie Murdaugh.
What does that text say?
It says going to check on M, be right back. 4466 shows a text message received incoming.
That call occurred at
9:06.
last call from Alex occurred at 9:06:51, correct?
Yes.
And the text came from Alex at 9:08:58, correct?
Yes.
And this was a text that was never read, I believe you testified to in the previous report, correct?
Yes, sir, correct.
All right, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Can you calculate the time between 9:06:51 and 9:08:58, please? Take your time. If you need a pen, we can get you.
It appears to be 2 minutes and 7 seconds.
There's 2 minutes and 7 seconds between that call from Alex to that text from Alex, correct?
Yes, sir, correct.
Thank you. Okay, let's look at lines 4465 and above it, 4468, and above that's obscure because it's stapled at 4467. Do you see those two entries?
Yes, sir.
And we see that's, mobile SMS at 9:08:58. Is that a data entry associated with that incoming text from Alex we just talked about?
Yes, sir, it is.
And what time is that again?
It's 9:08:58 p.m.
Okay. What's the next entry on that log?
The next entry on the log is at 9:31:44 p.m. Shows an end time of display off.
And I'm not going to ask you to do the precise math this time, but roughly how many minutes is that between 9:08:58 and 9:31:44?
Approximately 22 minutes.
For 22 minutes, nothing happens on that phone, correct?
Correct.
There's no orientation changes, the phone's not unlocked, there's no incoming calls, nothing outgoing, correct?
Correct.
The phone just sits there for approximately 22 minutes.
Correct.
All right. And what do we see start happening at 9:31:44?
We see that the display comes on is the start time of that.
Okay. And we've talked about this already. We see the display come on and off a few times. in that short span of time at about 9:31 p.m., correct?
Yes, sir.
But it's just a display coming on. Do you see anything associated with that display coming on?
No, sir, not until approximately the 9:34:14 p.m.
We'll get to that in a second. But at least for this display coming on, there seems to be no cause for that, correct?
Correct.
And you previously testified the screen coming on doesn't tell you a whole lot, does it?
No, sir.
It could be the phone is being bumped or moved in some way, correct?
Yes, sir.
It could be the phone's just sitting there and there's some sort of automatic process that causes that phone to light up, correct?
Correct.
All right, let's talk about, you start talking about it, but we see a instant message on line 4477, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that's at what time?
That's at 9:34:14 p.m.
And which contact is that from?
It shows the contact of Rogan.
And what does that text message say?
It says, "Tell Paul to call me."
All right, and you previously testified about this in her text message log. Was that text message ever read?
No, sir.
Skip down a little bit. And I'm on line 4498. Yeah, 98. And we see there, it looks like an incoming call, correct?
Yes, sir.
And who's that from?
It is from PA with the phone number of 1-803-942-1227.
And was that call answered?
No, sir.
And line 4503, what time is that entry?
That entry is at 9:47:23 p.m.
And what is that?
It is a text message that was received on that from Alex. It says, "Call me, babe."
And was that text ever read? I know that's referencing the previous report.
No, sir, that text was not read.
I'm going to hand this report back to you, and I want to have you look at the next few pages. I want you to tell this jury whether you see anything in your expert opinion that would indicate that anybody actively used that phone after that last text call.
Not on 6/7/2021.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to hand you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 284. Take a look at that and tell us what it is, please.
This is an Axiom report by Magnet Forensics that I prepared from Maggie's phone with health data information and steps.
Okay. So they include steps from Maggie's phone, correct?
Yes, sir.
At this time, State will move into
It's admitted.
Okay, I'm going to direct you to record 22. If I'm looking at the right thing. Nope. Record 23, excuse me. All right, record 23. What information does this record tell us?
This record tells us that 38 steps were recorded by this phone on 6/7/2021 at 8:17:41 p.m. was the start time, and the end time was 6/7/2021 at 8:18:29 p.m.
How many steps were taken at that time?
38 steps.
And this is a report that shows the precise time when the steps, at least the phone recorded the steps started and when they stopped, correct?
Correct.
All right, let's talk about that for a minute. Steps on a phone. How does the phone record steps? How does it decide that there are steps taking place?
It's several different ways it can record. It's dependent on how the phone's carried as to how many steps it records. If you carry a phone in your hand and you walk, it's going to record more steps. If you carry it on your waist in a phone case, it's not going to record as many steps because it's not detecting the motion. It's not 100% accurate as far as the steps. There are ways that if you're trying to meet your fitness goal, for instance, you can try to trick a phone or a smartwatch into believing you did more activities and more steps than you actually did.
Okay. So, but at a more fundamental level, what is the phone using to determine whether the steps are taking place?
It's a process running inside the phone that is recording the motion.
What does it use to record the motion?
As far as
would it be accelerometers?
A lot of times it would be. Some of the newer ones are recording actually more than that as far as recording strides and things like that, the newer versions.
All right. And in your opinion, the steps that a phone records, is it always 100% accurate?
No.
And so this says 38 steps. Does that necessarily mean that whoever was holding his phone actually moved exactly 38 steps?
No, sir.
But what does it tell you in a more general sense?
In a more general sense, it tells me that this phone, somebody was holding this phone and took steps, and it recorded steps.
All right. And let me reference back to the previous report. I believe you testified that at 8:17, Maggie's phone was unplugged, correct?
Yes, sir, it was.
All right. And then at 8:17, we start to see steps again, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, let's look at record 25. All right, and what does this show, record 25?
This shows that 43 steps were recorded by the phone. At 8:30:40 p.m. was the beginning, and it ended at 8:33:28 p.m.
Okay. All right, and let me point out something real quick. The entry above that, which is record I don't think there's a record number associated with it, but it says 8:10. Oh, okay. Yeah, I see an entry at 8:10:31, just above that record 25. What is that entry at 8:10:31? You see that?
At 8:10:31, it looks like it's part of a previous record. From the previous page, it shows the duration in minutes of 4.58.
Okay. And so some of these are a little bit out of chronological order, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. But the times that are recorded in each record is accurate, correct?
Yes, sir.
Even if some of these entries seem to have gotten out of order, correct?
Yes, sir.
Can you explain why that happened when you made this report?
I set it to produce in chronological order. Sometimes, though, when the report goes through, it will not do that. It's just an issue we've had with that report where it'll move it out of chronological order, but the information's still there and it's still accurate.
Okay. Let's look at record 26. What do you see in record 26?
In record 26, I see that 59 steps were recorded by the phone at 8:53:15 p.m. Begin and end at 8:55:32 p.m.
Okay. And again, how many steps was that?
It was 59 steps.
Okay. And I think you previously testified, we were looking at the timeline, it looked like someone was manipulating with that phone, correct? You
Correct.
saw some orientation changes, correct?
Yes, sir, correct.
We saw the camera come on at approximately that time, correct?
Correct.
But the phone's locked, correct?
Correct.
All right, I want to give this back to you, report, to have you look at it real quick. And you've also, I know, have studied this phone data in more detail than just in that report. Are you aware, after that 8:53 entry, of that phone ever recording any more steps?
No, sir. The next set of steps it shows it recorded was on 6/8/2021 at 3:12:22 p.m.
Okay. The next day.
The next day, yes, sir.
And let's circle back to that real quick. I know you were not present for the collection of Maggie's phone. Is that correct?
Correct.
But generally, the circumstances, as you understand them, are what and how it was collected?
The phone was collected from the side of the road. It was given to crime scene, who brought it back and logged it into our forensic lab, at which point I went over, logged it out of the forensic lab, and then took it over to our office to log it in.
And it was not collected till the next afternoon, correct? Or
Correct.
found until the next afternoon, excuse me.
Correct. My understanding is it was found on 6/8/2021.
All right. I think we're at a good stopping point.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we will adjourn for the evening and start back at 9:30 tomorrow morning. Please do not discuss the case. Get to a good stopping point.